Thank you very much, Commissioner Chester, Commissioner Freeland, for starting us off right with all of the information that we need to understand this very interesting and important discussion. I'd like to invite the panelists to come and take their seats. I'm Linda Noonan, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education, and I want to add my welcome and thank you for joining us on behalf of MBAE and the Rennie Center. We are now going to turn to a panel where we will hear a number of perspectives about what it means to be college and career ready and whether the Common Core standards will move students towards that goal. Since you have information on your seats about our panelists, I'm not going to take the time to give them a lengthy introduction, but we are really delighted to have them because they all have a range of expertise to share and present a perspective from a different point of view in the continuum from K to 12 on to the workforce. And we're going to start sort of in chronological order of that continuum with Jibril Solomon, who I'm delighted to hear has just brought his talents to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. He's a K to 12 educator and will talk to us from that point of view. Thanks, Jibril.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you to our two commissioners for setting the stage for the framework for this conversation, and also thank you to Commissioner Chester for introducing me. I am very recent, just getting started, and so I will start with a little disclaimer that when we made the arrangement for me to participate in this presentation and panel and share my perspectives, I haven't started working at the department yet, so my approach, my conversation was, and my comments were written from a different perspective slightly. And I'm still getting vetted on the department's goals and objectives and definition of college and career readinesses and strategies. I've been working very closely with Keith Westridge as part of one of the things that I'll be doing for the department. College and career readiness. I will be speaking about this topic from two perspectives. And one is from my work. As you may have noticed that I'm at Lesley University, and my doctoral dissertation, which I am hoping to defend soon, will be looking at the issues around college and career readiness for urban students. And I'm particularly looking at academic issues, academic preparation issues. I study academic intervention strategies that high schools are using after they have diagnosed students with the Accuplacer or any other instrument looking at PSAT scores, SAT scores, and find out that some of the students are not academically ready to take on credit-bearing college-level courses, and they start to design intervention on how do we now improve the preparation while the students are still in high school. So my work is studying those interventions and understanding them and trying to see which one of these interventions seem to hold greater promise for helping us kind of address this challenge. And that's kind of what I spent many nights doing and reading and writing about. The second perspective would be around my experiences as a teacher, both at the K-12 level and also at the higher education level, where as an adjunct faculty member, I actually deal with first-year freshman students who have completed the Accuplacer, some of whom have passed the Accuplacer, technically placed in college-level credit-bearing courses, and they arrive in my Intro to Psych or Intro to Sociology or Biology, General Biology 101 course. And some of the things that I am seeing in terms of those students' competencies to be able to actually perform and meet the expectation of that course. So I'll be speaking a little bit around what I'm seeing from that perspective. On the other side, teaching at the K-12 level, working with the Boston Adult Education High School, dealing with day seniors. These are high school seniors who, for a whole host of reasons, have either were not able to complete certain requirements, either they failed the course or they haven't taken the course, and they come to us needing to complete these high school courses to be able to meet their graduation requirement and be very successful. So for the past 4 years, kind of teaching US history, world history, and biology to those students, seeing a whole different side of readiness. And what does that mean? Now you are a senior, you are coming to us, and you're trying to complete your graduation requirement. Where do you stand? What's happening with the level of readiness? What are some of the signals, the academic signals that we see, that I see from that perspective? This past year, I switched over and has been doing adult education, so that's also going to be one of the things I'll be talking about. So I will let's move it along, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to entertain questions and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jibril. And now we actually have a student who can give us perspective, having lived through this college preparation. Ivanna Lara is a student from Regis College, and we're delighted to have her with us today.
Hi, everybody. I'm nervous since I'm like the youngest person in this room right now. So I'm Ivanna, and I attend Regis College. I'm going to be a sophomore in the fall. I'm majoring in biochem with a concentration in pre-med, and I'm a Boston Line Academy graduate. Graduated 2010. Can't believe it's been that long already. But my high school did a really good job in preparing me for college. It's a college prep school, so that's what they focus on. And throughout my high school career, I actually took advantages of all the opportunities, all the resources that were offered, like Bottom Line, Access. I was part of High Score Task Force, Beantown Society, a lot of different social justice organizations and college prep organizations. I actually ended up being placed in basic, I don't know what you call it, but the 096, so in math class, because I really didn't know the importance of the AccuPlacer test. I feel like that's one thing that high school students should know when, transitioning from high school to college. I was brought here today because I'm part of Access, and they asked me to be in the panel discussion. So I will be sharing more with you guys after, when we have questions. I'll be sharing more of like my transitioning from high school to college and what does it mean to be college ready? Because I feel like I was prepared. My high school did a really good job in preparing me to be in college and be able to take these different courses, and I'm just blessed to be here today. Thank you guys for having me. I'll be sharing more with you later.
Thank you, Ivanna. Loretta Holloway is a professor at Framingham State University, and so she sees from the higher education perspective the students who are coming in from Massachusetts high schools. Thanks, Loretta.
Thank you everyone for having me here. I see several familiar and friendly faces in the auditorium, and I hope that I'll meet more of you later. I think I was asked to be on this panel because of my K through 12, actually K through 16 work. I look at it from a couple perspectives, as a perspective of a college faculty member who is on the first year writing committee, who sets the standards for our freshman writing classes, who was dragged kicking and screaming into actually administering AccuPlacer. And so I'll probably have a different perspective of the use of AccuPlacer, which I actually think doesn't catch all of the people. So if we were using some sort of different test, there'd probably be more people placed in remediation than we currently have. Also, too, as a person who's taught the developmental writing course and developed the guidelines for it initially at Framingham State for the last decade, I can talk about the struggles that the students have. When I first got assigned to teach that class, everyone asked me, why did you do something bad? Was I being punished to teach that class? And my attitude about it was that I'd rather teach students who are angry versus apathetic any day of the week, because I can work with anger, I can't work with apathy. And they generally are angry because they really believe that they're ready and they're prepared, and they come to college and we're basically saying, hi, nice to meet you, but you're not. Which is really not necessarily a very good welcome. I also come from the perspective of being a parent advocate and the kinds of things that K through 12 parents are trying to get information about. I actually developed a college readiness program for parents to talk about, not about admissions, but the fact that admissions does not equal college ready. And many parents think that. Many parents really believe that once their kid has that cap and gown on and has that letter in their hand, that they are ready for college. And they're very disappointed when they find that their child is not and their child is struggling. It's not just the students who are taking remedial courses, but it's the students that are regular students. And it's a range of students, not just students with content barrier backgrounds, but even advanced learners as well, who often struggle because they hadn't had to struggle through K through 12, and they get to college and it's the first time they do poorly. It's the first time they fail a test and they don't know how to recover. So I'll be talking more about that later. Thank you.
And once we've gotten kids all the way through the education system, Dave Mancuso sees them at AT&T, and we'll give you the work readiness point of view.
I guess the buck stops here, or at least the employment, and the buck starts here for some. I'm going to share just a little bit of context with you to start. Hopefully you won't accuse me of being just a shameless corporate executive for the commercial here for a second, but I want you to understand what kind of a world these students are coming into. If you look at AT&T, we are the nation's largest employer of full-time union workers. So if we are looking for students who are coming out of high school, who are looking for a career, not necessarily moved on to college yet, we have opportunities for them because of the way our company is structured. But we're like most companies. I think most companies have very similar corporate requirements. We're all looking for folks who have literacy skills, who are proficient at math, who have critical thinking skills and problem-solving skills. We're looking for folks who can communicate, who can actually sit down and have a debate and a dialogue with others. And ultimately, we want folks who understand how to collaborate with one another. We have several 100,000 employees in our company, and we all have to work together every day, despite the different responsibilities that we have. So collaboration is absolutely key for us. And then there's something that's often understated. Knowing how to work in a professional environment, the simple skills of workforce etiquette are absolutely critical. And these are things that don't necessarily get addressed as you see a student work through the education system. I can tell you this, these are the skills that I understand we are talking about in terms of 21st century skills. I know that MBAE, after an independent research project, has decided to support the Common Core, largely because it not only aligns with what we're trying to do at the state level in math and English, but also because it supports many of those skills that we in the corporate world are looking for. If you came to AT&T and wanted to become part of our management team, it's very clear to us that we can teach you how to build a cell phone, or we can help you understand how we run our business and our network. But we can't necessarily spend the time or the energy to teach you how to be a critical thinker or how to communicate with others. So if I was going to say one thing to this crowd today, those are the skills, those critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills that are absolutely essential. And I think Commissioner Chester said something very interesting. We've taught kids how to have a wonderful personal narrative. In a world where everyone wins a trophy, there isn't a lack of self-esteem coming into our business. But there is a lack of ability to analyze their own critical strengths and weaknesses, and then analyze the critical strengths and weaknesses of their partners in the workplace, and then collaborate in a way to bring those skills together to make us a successful company in a very, very competitive world.
So you can see that we have a wide range of experience on our panel, and I am going to just give them a chance to speak with each other before opening to questions from the audience. I wanted to start with a few questions, one of the joys of being a moderator. Ivanna, you said that you did feel prepared for college. If you were going to advise your fellow students, and you mentioned taking the availability of opportunities, and I do thank Access for introducing us to Ivanna, what would you advise students in high school? How would you tell them to prepare for college? And maybe what do you wish somebody had told you?
Usually, as students, we tend to rely a lot on people doing stuff for us, like teaching us, and I would advise students, especially high school students, seniors, to reach out to the resources that they have available, because a lot of people just sit there, and a lot of students sit there and expect things to be done for them, like their guidance counselor have to write their recommendation letters, like they expect stuff to be done they expect stuff to be done so much that they don't really take their part into outreaching more for getting resources that they need. Like nobody told me how important the AccuPlacer was. I really wish that in high school they would have stressed that more, because it is really important. It's gonna like backtrack you from taking the course that you need for your major if you start off at a 096 level like I did. And that's something I wish. And I would advise those students to actually take the initiative in finding other resources that they had available to them.
Jibril, since we're talking about AccuPlacer, and you've done a lot of looking at AccuPlacer, are there other things that can be done to help guide students while they're in high school to understand whether they're on track to enter college or career training without the need for remediation?
Well, since 2004, meaning when I was in the Boston Public Schools and working on other projects, we have started looking at a pilot project whereby if high school juniors were given the opportunity to not only know about the AccuPlacer, but also take the AccuPlacer as a junior, as a form of kind of signaling to you as a student and signaling to the teachers and signaling to the administrators, where are the gaps in your academic preparation? If you'd enter today as a junior, you would have placed in a remedial math or developmental math course. And using the data from those kind of diagnostic instruments and for signaling to try to figure out a way to improve the preparation of students. And these pilots have been running for quite some time, and we have had some successes. So what has happened to Ivanna, I'm glad to announce that actually those gaps are being filled and has been filled for quite some, the past 6 or 7 years in terms of better preparing students. So having the knowledge about the expectation of higher education, because we come back to that, and one of those expectations of higher education is you will have to take a college placement assessment when you enter higher education. And what I find both as a practitioner and in my research is that the knowledge about the test is not enough to really prepare the students to do what they need to do to meet the expectations. Understanding the impact of the assessment, that what does that mean to take developmental courses or remedial courses? I have talked to a number of students who would say, oh, I'll take a developmental math. Sure, I'll just take the math. I'll take the course. I don't pay for it. My financial aid covers it. I'm like, wait a minute, yes. Because you're spending time, energy, and effort in a course that, although it's helping you improve your academic preparation for future successes, it's going to cost you time and money to do so. So I think the strategy will be to move beyond just informing students and families about the existence of the AccuPlacer, what the role and the definition of what the AccuPlacer does in terms of determining placement, to now helping them understand the implication of what it means to be enrolled in remedial education. I mean, the traditional list that you find typically in the research and literature, delay graduation because you have to spend a semester or 2 semesters, a year and a half taking remedial courses. There's no way you're going to graduate in 4 years unless you kind of take additional courses. The financial cost, because you have to pay for these courses. And what does that mean for your future and your preparation? And the commissioner have cited the 25% nationwide of students who ever made it out of those remedial courses. And I see that in my own classroom. And as a faculty member, I have students in my freshman introductory psych courses who are so discouraged to say, you know, I mean, this is a waste of my time. I'm in a remedial math course, and why am I in this course? And why should I have to do this? Can I fast track out of this course? Can I just do a quick review and get out of this course and be on my way? Well, these are things I think we need to seriously consider, because I think the level of deficiency is not as steep as we think it is. And I've seen this. Most of the time, the students have the skills. The skills have become dormant. A student, for example, typically within a week to 2 weeks in a review course to review basic arithmetic, adding, subtracting, long division, that student is ready to go. So designing that remedial course to be a semester long, 15 weeks, the student will eventually say, well, I reviewed. It was just a dormant skill. I've recovered it. I'm done, two weeks. And they say, well, but you have 13 more to go. And they said, okay, well, I will see you later. And therefore, Johnny's gone because he's bored. I mean, a lot of the attrition that you see in remedial education is not because of lack of competency, but the aspiration that students have had, the excitement coming in, you know, after a few, they get bored and they said, well, I don't want to continue in this course. I reviewed it. Can I fast track out of this course? Can I audit the course? So I think these are strategies we need to think about to really kind of revisit. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did, and actually it's very interesting because in 2008, MBAE put out a report, The Perspective of Employers on High School Reform, and one of the things that we had called for was mastery as opposed to seat time. And you've raised the issue of one of the interventions that could help kids prepare is to look at remediation as something less than a full semester, to look at when the student is ready as opposed to a one-size-fits-all course. And so that's something I would imagine that the Common Core would give us the opportunity to look at ways to measure mastery as opposed to simply proficiency or, you know, sitting in a class for the requisite amount of time to earn a credit. Different ways to look at when kids are ready to move on to the next topic. So I think that that's an interesting perspective. And I want to go back to Loretta because I was really intrigued by the fact that you could work with angry students. And maybe you can also share how, you know, who are they? Are they angry at themselves? Are they angry at their schools? What are the ways to prevent the need for remediation?
Well, I tell my students that I'm used to dealing with angry people because I have children. So, so if they hate me, I tell them to get in line. I think the reason why I like working with those students is because you do see that marked improvement. That first of resistance initially, as I say to them, I've taught that class for a decade, and in October, the class average is a D. It's always a D. And they nod, and they look around, because they know it's not them. They think it's going to be everybody else until I give the first assignment back, and there might be one C minus, and everyone else has a D or an F. And I say to them, you know, you thought it was going to be everybody else, didn't you? And they're nodding, and then we start having a conversation. It really is this idea where I tell them we're going to be covering everything you should have learned at K through 12 in 15 weeks. And in many ways, for some of them, that's an unrealistic expectation. And for some of them, they really only need a couple of weeks to get themselves together. So that's a broad range of students. They're generally, I'd say they fall in a couple of categories of anger. They're the students that have been getting A's and B's in high school English who are very angry because they feel like they've been misled. They feel like, you know, they were getting A's and B's. Why am I in this class? How is it possible? And then when they get papers back from me, they're pointing at things saying, no one's told me this, no one told me that, no one told me this. You know, if someone had told me this, I would have been fixing it a long time ago. They're the students that are in that class that kind of knew in the back of their mind they weren't very strong at writing, and they finally got caught. and they, have sort of been able to, get through and get by. And those students in some ways are kind of relieved that they finally can have a regular conversation about what they sort of knew, but they never knew how to articulate. And then I have students who just still don't get it. Those are students that are often very far behind. I often have students in that class within the first 2 weeks where I know they're not going to pass. And the reason why I know they're not going to pass is because their writing skills are so poor that they really should take the class twice. And I actually have conferences with them where I say, please, please, please don't drop this class. They want to drop it. And I said, because, it's not going to get better. If you drop the class, you're going to have to take it again sometime. And it really affects all the other courses that they're taking. If you get placed in an introduction to college writing, which at our campus is not a remedial course, it's because it's a credit-bearing course, but it's still the course before freshman writing. You can't get placed in certain other classes either, because often those students didn't just get below the cut score in the writing test, they also got below the cut score in the reading test, which means, think about it. They can't take a history class, they can't take an introduction to sociology class, they'd probably do poorly in an introduction to psychology class, or even some of the sciences. When we look at the math and English as sort of the basic issues, it really isn't reflecting the broad reach of the problem, because if you're doing poorly in a math class, you are going to do poorly in a science class. That's the biggest complaint of my science colleagues. It's not that the students don't have an aptitude for science, is that they don't have the math skills to take the advanced science courses. The biggest complaint of the history department is that the students don't read well and can't write well. The biggest complaint in the sociology department is both. They can't do statistics and they can't do the writing. So you have a student that's an introduction to college writing, but is also introduction to sociology, who's expected within the first 4 weeks of class to do a 10-page paper. With resources that involve math and science. And you think about the struggles that student has. And the way you reach that student is to talk about those things. Because very often I often go to high schools to talk about college readiness. And the story I tell is once I was at Doherty and this kid raised his hand and he's like, well, I know you're showing us all this writing stuff and how you mark papers, but I don't have to do that, worry about that, because I'm going to be pre-med. I'm not going to have to write. Oh, yes, you are. And that's why I touched her, because she knew. And they all think that, I'm going to do this, and so I won't ever have to write, read, or talk, or I'm just going to be a scientist, and vice versa. So that's part of the issue. I think what's good about the core is that we have those literacy standards for science and technology and history that are really asking people to, and making students and teachers, I think, recognize that they're going to have this basic level of literacy in the content areas in writing and communication. I also want to make a comment in response to Mr. Mancuso about skills. One of the things I actually do in that developmental writing class is I make my students stand at the other side of the room, walk up to me, shake my hand and say, hello, my name is Loretta Holloway. And you can imagine how many students cannot do that successfully the first time. And I make them keep doing it until they can do it successfully. And we're talking about really sort of professional communication skills. If they can't do that, they're not able to do a presentation in my class, and they're definitely not able to do a presentation for AT&T.
And speaking of AT&T, AT&T has a lot of retail stores, particularly those in urban areas that present opportunities for inner city youth to gain work experience. And I've heard you, Dave, I have the advantage of having heard you talk about that in the past and the kinds of needs that the company has for kids with the ability to come in and work in an environment like that. So can you share that with the group?
Sure. I apologize to those of you who may have heard this before because I repeat it all the time. It's very interesting. One of the themes that seems to come out today to me is the idea of integrating knowledge and education with actual applicable skills. And And there's an interesting phenomena when I look at education as an employer, division between the sort of inner city view and then the suburban view. And what we find, I'd mentioned that we're the largest employer of full-time union workers. When you go into one of our retail stores, our company-owned retail stores, those are union employees. These are the jobs that are essentially entry-level jobs that create a path. Used to be, years ago in the telecommunications industry, you would go and climb a pole, you would connect wires, you'd learn how to work with copper, and you'd have a great career, and you could actually support your family on it. The way that happens today is, in many ways, through those retail stores. They're not just typical mall employees. What we're looking for in those retail environments are not just folks who have all these skills we've talked about, but the simple skill of being bilingual. And what's interesting in today's world is that the inner city kids come to us with, I'll use the colloquial term, street smarts, good ability to actually be natural salespeople, because that's how they get through their day every day, and they're bilingual. And so they're actually the folks that we can immediately bring into and show them the AT&T way of doing things. If they're ambitious enough and they want to grow, there are ample opportunities for them. And they see that they've got to put that work into it. Nothing's taken for granted by those individuals who come to us. So there's a really interesting phenomena there that, I did a media interview yesterday, and the reporter asked me if I spoke Spanish, because it was a Spanish language television station. I don't have that skill. That's a disadvantage. And so I think when we look at what kind of a world these students are coming into, the thing that I will tell you is it's extremely diverse, more diverse than ever. It is global, and it is highly, highly competitive, not just for us as a business, but for all of those students who are coming to us looking for work. So hopefully that answers your question. But I think that's the key for us is don't underestimate the skills a student brings to you as an educator, and figure out how you can take those skills and turn them into knowledge-based skills that they can then employ for us in the workforce.
And I think I remember you once telling me that the kids who come in those entry-level jobs also know how to do things with their cell phones that AT&T didn't imagine they were going to be doing. So they bring that extra skill too.
I'm sure that you as educators, those of you who are educators, have this experience every day. It's not always something that happens to us, but we're finding the skill set the younger generation brings to us with technology is actually changing our business dramatically every day. Just because of that phenomena. This is stuff that they just live with their whole life. I'm still trying to figure out how to use my smartphone, and the kids are taking me through it, saying, hey, hang on a second, let me show you how to do it.